Welcome to WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast series by Pharm.D. This episode was made possible by a generous sponsorship from WCG. For more information, visit wcgclinical.com. In this episode, Taryn Grome, editor of Pharm.D, meets with Kinnari Patel, Pharm.D, Chief Operating Officer and Head of Development at Rocket Pharmaceuticals.
Kinnari, welcome to the Pharm.D WOW podcast program.
Thank you so much for having me here, and it's great to speak to you. I just want to say for a minute that I really admire the work you do to bring the pharmaceutical and biotech industry together and to create avenues like this to share knowledge and best practices. The work through Pharm.D, events you host, and now the WOW podcast is a great way for us to really share and learn from each other. So I really appreciate you doing this, as well as having me available for this Q&A.
Well, thank you so much. It was very kind of you to say, and we're so grateful to be able to reconnect with you since your Pharma Voice 100 back in 2018. I know through that experience working with you on that issue that you have a real passion for rare disease and rare disease patients. Can you tell our audience what fuels this passion for you?
My passion is really fueled through meeting these patients and their families. It actually started back in 2004 when I was doing a pharmacy rotation at the Office of Orphan Product Development. And during that rotation, I had numerous opportunities to meet patients, patient advocacy groups, and hear about their struggles, their loved ones that were dying of rare diseases. And unfortunately, many of them were parents of kids that were battling fatal diseases and had a few months to live. At that point, it just felt so heartbreaking to feel their struggle, their pain, and their helplessness. So my motivation and drive really became stronger after meeting them, and the few weeks I was at the FDA really changed the trajectory of my career. And in the last 15 years, I've really focused on the rare disease drug development. It's kind of cool because in the process, through all the large pharmas and companies that I've been at, we've been able to really champion the rare disease change and increase awareness. But more recently, right before I joined Rocket, I was at BMS, AstraZeneca, and it was in the last 5 to 7 years, I saw cancers, metastatic melanoma, rare diseases, etc., become from life-threatening diseases to extending patients' lives. So really, for me, the challenge was, how do we make this a one-and-done cure? And that's how I ended up joining Rocket 4 years ago, where Rocket's focus is simple. We want to help patients with rare diseases, mostly pediatrics. Indications are the ones we pursue. And we want to do it from a scientific platform where it's really one-and-done cure, hopefully, for these patients. And that's kind of been all of it put together in the last 15 years. I feel like my passion's coming together, and it's really just making an impact, one patient, one disease at a time.
That's amazing. And, it's so true that rare disease community just is so inspirational. And you're right, when you speak to these parents, you want to do everything possible to help them because it's just, in some cases, so heartbreaking.
It really is. I mean, it feels like we know so much and we have so many knowledge, tools, and where to get information on clinical trials and et cetera. And unfortunately, most of these parents don't know this, and they don't have a healthcare background or have the support system to get more information about the diseases or the right experts at the table. So anything we can do to make a dent, and as I'm sure you know, there are 7,000 rare diseases at this point, and only about 10% of them have treatment options. So most of these diseases, even if a patient actually gets the right diagnosis, they have no option available to them. And hopefully we can work together to change that in the years and the decades to come.
I agree with you. I hope so, too. And you're right. And even when they do get that diagnosis, there isn't a drug for them. But so oftentimes that diagnosis is prolonged as well because the diseases are so rare that the physicians just don't have experience with those conditions, which is another complication.
Definitely. There are many challenges, and that's one of them. So I'm hoping the events that we're doing at Rocket and other organizations and patient advocacy do to bring the rare disease community together, but also to bring those that are in the biotech, healthcare industry to really learn about these unique rare diseases will hopefully help patients get better diagnosis, faster diagnosis, because it's really a race against time.
It is a race against time. Perfectly said. And speaking of that rare disease community, talk to me about what your plans are for Rare Disease Day this year. Our conversation's really, the timing is spot on. Last year, I understand you were instrumental in getting the Empire State Building lit up in rare disease colors. Tell me about what you're doing this year, and how did you make that happen?
Oh, my God, it was so fun. So about 2 years ago, we've always done rare disease events and activities in-house in the company. But about 2 years ago, our company was about 25 employees. We felt kind of grown up. It's all relative, right? And we said, let's do something to bring the biotech industry and the healthcare industry in New York City together. And around the same time, we moved into 75th floor of the Empire State Building as our headquarters. And when we moved here, our relations with NORD, NIH, and the rare disease communities, they kept on saying, hey, did you know Empire State Building changes their lights for events? We would love for them to have this iconic building recognize the Rare Disease Day. And we found out that many requests in the prior years were rejected. So we said, why not put together our connections that we have, being a tenant of this building, as well as NIH, NORD, and other organizations power together to put in a really sincere global request to do this. And we were so ecstatic that the request was supported by Empire State. They were great partners. So last year we had a small event of about 75 people coming together, mostly Rocket and patient advocacy groups. And at the end of the day, we were able to see the iconic building change its light. And for me, that was an amazing for us to know. But later on, 2-3 days later, we found out through social media and Facebook pages and Node pages that this was a really, really moving thing for patients around the world. There were posts of solidarity. There was outpouring of support saying, I'm struggling or my child's struggling, and thank you for recognizing this and bringing us together. So this really fueled us and our energy of what we want to do this year. And true to the nature of Rocket, and Rocket is unique because our CEO and the co-founder, Dr. Gaurav Shah, he's actually a musician. He's not just any musician, he's a Grammy-nominated musician. And he really runs this company like an orchestra. So each of us have our expertise, and together we make better sound than each of us alone. That's the philosophy he runs this company. So we said, why not bring the music and the arts and treating a patient holistically together with the sciences? So this year we're calling it I Am Rare, Hear Me Roar. And this event is going to take place at Carnegie Hall. Empire State Building has once again agreed to change the lights. The NASDAQ towers and our friends there have also agreed to post it at the Times Square about this event and really raise awareness to the millions of people that walk through Times Square area about rare diseases. And the premise of this year's event is really simple. It's going to take place on the rarest day of the year, and this year that being Saturday, February 27th. It's going to be February 29th, and it's going to be taking place from 3 to 7 p.m. Initially, we'll have patients and their families sharing stories about struggles of getting a diagnosis, to not having a therapy option available, to even a patient sharing their perspective on what gene therapy meant for them and how they went through the process of clinical studies and how they can educate other patients. And at the end, we'll have a reception with the 1920s music, because this came up with our advisor, HR advisor, Greg Reynolds, and our CEO, myself, a few months ago, saying, oh my God, can you believe it's 2020 already? And we talked about how the 1920s was such an amazing decade, where, did you know that it was a decade where penicillin and insulin were discovered? I mean, these therapies are treated and used by millions of patients even this day and age. We feel like the 2020s are the era where we can have a lot of rare disease and a lot of diseases be treated in a curative fashion through gene therapy. This whole thing of bringing the eras of science, music, we're really, really excited about this event. We hope you can join us on that day, and we hope your listeners are able to join us as well. There's more information available about the registration of the event on our website at rocketpharma.com.
That's awesome. what a great event to be putting on, and what a great event to be a part of. And thank you for allowing our listeners to be part of it as well. So how exciting, and I just think such thoughtful care that you all took to put it together. It's really quite evident, again, what rare disease patients mean to you all. It's exciting. So let's talk about some of the rare disease programs you have implemented over your career. I know that these are challenging programs to put together, but talk to me about some of the ones that you have worked on that have meant the most to you.
Some of the ones in the past really started from doing educational things to different pharmacy universities as drug development courses, and evolved into some of the larger pharmaceuticals, and now Rocket doing a company-wide awareness. But I think the most impactful for me, I would have to say, is the work we're doing at Rocket of bringing the patients into the development, not just for our therapies, but other diseases that at this point have no therapeutic options, to see if there's ways that we can advance science in those fields. And also looking at compounds and products, mechanism of action across even prior companies that I've been at, to say, hey, mechanistically, does product X, Y, and Z impact or have an potential impact for a rare disease? And a lot of the work done there through other companies has just been wonderful, because some of these therapies I've seen come to market since then, or at least the research advanced. So I know at least one or a few more patients have hope for a therapeutic option. So I think, to me, that's been the most impactful. And I think the only way we can do this is person can make a difference. As you know, NORD was started by a mom, right, that had a kid with a rare disease. We believe in the power of one. We believe that if many people know about rare diseases and the struggle, we can, as a community, really, really make an impact. And so my success will be to have people come together and make an impact in totality and advance the science and the therapies and the struggles for these patients and overcome them.
I love that, the power of one. It's very poignant. Earlier on you alluded to some of the gene therapy work that you all are doing. And really in a short amount of time, 4 years or so, you've been instrumental in leading Rocket's growth from a 3-person company to a public company with, 5 innovative gene therapy products in development. Talk to me about what those early days were like and how you're managing the growth today.
Oh, my God, it's absolutely insane to think how far we've come in such a short time. On one hand, it feels like I've been doing this for decades. On the other hand, it feels like it was just yesterday. It really is. It's insane. I think what happened is the first few months, we actually didn't even have our own office space. So first 6 months, we were in the back conference room, sharing a table with 4 of us, our chief medical officer, our CEO, myself, and other colleagues, trying to figure out, okay, what do we license? What are monogenic diseases out there? What gene therapy platforms could be applicable for them? And what are all the things we don't know? So it was like a little puzzle box. We had a puzzle of, here's what we know, here's what we don't know, and there was a lot that we didn't know. And we're like, how do we get the experts around the table to help us figure out some of the unknowns and move this forward? And this morning we are having new hire training for about 20-some team members that recently joined. And we were just reflecting on the similar question, saying, how do we get this far? And is it real? And is this what we expect? And the answer is no. On one hand, we know it's possible to be the next Genentech, because Genentech had started somewhere. But would we be that? We hoped for it. But would we get as far as we did so quickly? We were never expecting this. But it really came down to, honestly, the philosophy we had of the few core people. It focused on 5 Ps. We really care about the patients. We feel really, really fortunate that patients in the communities, even when we didn't have therapies, or really more than 10, 20 million at our disposal, welcomed us into the community. One of the most memorable things we did is Camp Sunshine is a nonprofit organization where Fanconi Anemia Research Foundation brings patients and their families struggling with this life-threatening disease together. And they invited our chief medical officer, our CEO, and myself to come and spend 2 days with all the patients, the scientists that have been working 20-plus years trying to figure out what can we do beyond a bone marrow transplant for these patients. And we got to learn firsthand what's important to the patients. And we use that knowledge a few years later to really design the clinical studies that make sense for them and that would add value for them. The second P that we focused on is pipeline. How do we get innovative pipeline, and innovative in a specific sense as can we find monogenic rare diseases where a change of correction of that defective gene could really make an impact on that disease and could be curative. And then the other thing we were fortunate to do is getting the right partners at the table. The CMAT organization where we've licensed 3 of our 5 programs is the NIH of Spain. So we were able to partner with them, and they're part of the same Rocket family. The Pharm organization in California gave us funding of nearly $10 million to help advance our LED program in clinical studies. And we've had some amazing partners like Stanford, UCSD, UCLA, Lund University in Sweden, etc., coming together. So I think learning from this world-renowned, either the disease expert or gene therapy expert, has been such an humbling experience that we brought. And our fourth P is really about the people. The people we have at Rocket, it's a really unique culture. And I would love for you to come and visit us and spend time with our team. Because our team, yes, they're extremely intelligent, curious, hardworking team members. But the one thing they have is they have this enormous passion and drive to make a difference. They want to make a difference in the scientific platform. They want to make a difference in patients. And I think that's what drives us to be really successful. And that philosophy started from the back conference rooms in the first few months, and it still carries us forward, having the right team at the core, but also having the right vision of why we're doing this and what can we do to next phase of Rocket. And I think as we talk about the next phase, as you said, we have 5 programs, 4 in the clinic this year, US and EU. And then we also recently announced that we're doing in-house manufacturing because gene therapy is really complicated to manufacture. If we can do this in-house ourselves, we can do it more effectively and more cost-friendly. So that's really our goal. We're expanding in a way that's hopefully thoughtful and sensible, but stays true to the successes and the reason we've been successful to date.
That's amazing. What a story to tell. And how gratifying it must be to see the progress you've made in such a relatively short time. And yes, you all could be the next Genentech. You're right. They did have to start someplace. And with that great vision and with your 5P principles, you're on the right path. Not to add another P, but there you go. I think it's a remarkable story. And I also think that you have a remarkable role to play. You wear 2 very distinct hats. You're the Chief Operating Officer, but you're also Head of Development. So talk to me how you work with that duality, and tell me what a day is like for you.
Oh, it's so hard to describe. I think it goes back to the simple philosophy we have at Rocket, which is we wear multiple hats. We do whatever we need to do to move the pipeline forward in a sensible way, and we really focus on each patient being treated at a time with the highest quality product. So my objective as a Chief Operating Officer is really the company's objective. And what that means in terms of functionalities is I work on everything from a day-to-day of HR, hiring, interviewing people, to writing regulatory briefing books. Still do it, love it, it's my bread and butter. To overseeing trainings for new hires, patient advocacy, clinical science, and operations. It really comes down to we all wear multiple hats, and that's the culture that we have at Rocket. And the fun thing about the development side of things is I love the fact that we can integrate all of the complexities of gene therapy and drug development together. So the development hat is really rewarding and fun. It's challenging, but also fun, because when we see these therapies being brought to patients and seeing potential cures and benefit risk that they have in a positive light, that makes it all worth it. I mean, the coolest thing is because of we wear multiple hats, we are not afraid to roll up our sleeves, and each person in the company, whether you're an admin, you're the CEO, each of us are considered working leaders, which means every one of us rolls up our sleeves and does the job, but also each of us are expected to behave as true leaders for the company, for the industry, and for the patient. And that philosophy has helped that less than 20 people in the R&D organization, we were able to get 7 applications, 4 INDs and 4 clinical trial applications in Europe together across 2 platforms, and really, and the prospect of helping the patients with devastating diseases and moving in so much in the basics of clinical development, which is challenging to begin with, but to do it in such small and few patients, such small numbers of actual team members is remarkable. So to me, the development hat, whether it's development or CEO, it all comes together. In our philosophy that we ask whether you're a finance person or your R&D and scientist is simple. Let's make sure that every dollar we use is used towards advancing the science and making a therapy available for a patient. And you can come at it from any angle that you'd like, from functionally, but we're all working towards the same goal. And I think that's the fun part of wearing multiple hats at this company, is you feel the impact and you get to see the patients and interact with them.
Well, even with the multiple hats, it's a remarkable, again, story, and what a unique model you all have in terms of developing a corporate culture that empowers all of your employees to act on the behalf of patients right from the start. So kudos to you all. Let's talk about some of those drug development area issues that you face in terms of rare disease. How do you think companies such as yours are overcoming some of those traditional obstacles? Because, let's face it, to put forward that many applications in such a short amount of time, you may have found some secret sauce.
Our secret sauce is really copy-paste. No, I'm kidding. It really becomes where we use each other's talents, and the more we do this same thing over and over, the more we learn. But I think that the biggest value for us has been the ecosystem. So we work hand in hand with FDA, EMA, and Spanish health authorities. I think having that open and honest dialogue from the beginning helps you understand what needs to go on these applications, what kind of preclinical studies do you need to do. But then also having the right team members with the right expertise that says, hey, let's be a little more conservative. It's a new area where there's not a lot of regulations and guidances, but we try to think about what's the purest way the highest quality product could be put together. And from a clinical ops perspective, how do we design a trial and put the right team, the medical team together at the hospital, so when a patient comes through, they have the best experience and the white glove service. So that way it's a little less stress for them to deal with, and they can really focus on their recovery. So we really do things with that perspective, and hopefully that makes a difference. The cool thing is we're not afraid to make mistakes and learn from them. So even a few weeks ago, I went to California to meet one of the moms who has gone through our gene therapy, and my coffee conversation was like, what can we do better? What did we not do right? And how do we fix this, right? And simple things as, hey, could you make sure you give me a cheat sheet when I should eat, what I should eat before the next day's lab? Having those direct conversations really helps us make this a program that is good for the patient.
Fabulous. Let's switch tacks a little bit here. You are one of, a few women sitting in a chief operating role in a pharma company. Do you consider yourself to be a role model? And at the same time, what are some of the challenges for women who want to reach the C-suite?
I've never thought about myself as a role model, I'll be honest. To me, it comes with so much sense of responsibility and accomplishment, and I feel like I'm just getting started. But I think that when I became C-suite 2 years ago, the board unanimously asked me to be Chief Operating Officer, and my answer was, no, thank you. I'm not qualified. Let me find you the right person to be at the table. That was my honest truth in my response to them, because there was so much I didn't know, and I was so afraid of making a decision or making a decision that maybe is not the best decision. So to me, that's really fearful. So what I tried to do is I've tried to reach out to other women leaders that were in similar positions. And unfortunately, most startup companies have traditional all-boys club leadership. And traditionally, not too many females are doing fast-paced gene therapy type of work that we do. So it was quite a lonely job at first. And I'm fortunate because I was able to be honest and not have that held against me when I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. And our CEO, Gaurav, he's extremely supportive leader, and he's really focused on developing the team at Rocket. and its partners. So he encouraged me to attend a Harvard Business School program, which was designed for first-time C-suite or industry leaders, called Advanced Management Program. And at this program, I was able to interact with leaders from 40-plus countries, including a handful of us were female leaders. So I was able to formulate not just skill sets and toolboxes needed to help us succeed in the next phase, but also to have a support system available. I believe there's a lot more we need to do to get the women at the table, because I know there's so many females that are qualified to do this and do this even better than I can. And hopefully the work you're doing here with having these podcasts for a while, as well as some of the other works, will help next generation of women leaders be recognized earlier on and brought to the table where they can really make an impact, because that diversity of thinking and experience helps everybody.
Thank you. And I'm so glad that you took that leap, because you're obviously doing a fantastic job. But I also think that it shows some humility to say, I don't know what I don't know. And yet you had the courage to go and find the answers. So that's fantastic, and that's a great lesson to everybody, right? You don't know everything, so how do you find the information or get the knowledge to lift you up to that next level? So that's fantastic.
Thank you. It's hard to say that. It's hard to say that because, you're nervous and you want to prove yourself, right? But I encourage more people to really understand themselves. So know what you know what your strengths that you bring to the table, but also where you need to ask for help, reach out for help.
Exactly. And, you had a supportive CEO, which not everybody does. So you were in a fortunate position where he looked at you and said, this is talent I need, and I'm going to get her what she needs to help lead this company. So that's also a great asset.
It really is. I mean, he's just an amazing leader that's very supportive. And I think the other thing is our founding chairman, Dr. Rod Funk, the RTW Foundation, they were really about, it's not about the age. It's not about what you look like. It's what you bring to the table and what you strive is to make a difference. I think that philosophy that resonates within Rocket even now and will continue to help more individuals have opportunities based on what they can do and how much they're driven by their passion to make things move forward. More leaders, more male sponsors need to be like them.
Agreed. And, speaking of passion, I also know you have a passion for mentoring and sponsorship yourself. So tell me why this is important to you.
It actually comes back to this question. I kind of thought about it. I said, where does this all come from? Because I've always been a tutor from middle school onwards to a TA, and in college, that's how I made my extra money. I TA'd science and genetics labs. But it really comes down to my mom. My mom had this dream of being a teacher. And unfortunately, growing up in India as a female, she didn't have that opportunity. But she always echoed with my sisters and I the value of education and value of helping each other, because that's the only way everyone's going to move together and move communities and families together. So as an immigrant child, when I first came to corporate America, college was easy, right? Because it's all about just intelligence and passing exams, which I was fairly good at. But coming to corporate America, that was completely foreign. I made so many mistakes. Oh my God. I would ask my sister, and she's like, listen, I'm a scientist. I can't help you. So there were a lot of know-how that I lost, and a lot of hard work and mistakes I made, which probably made things life harder for me and my husband. So I want to make sure that we can kind of get rid of this hardship for the next generation, or the individuals that want to do this, whether they're immigrant or whether it's the first time they're in, American corporations, or trying to get even individuals that have been exposed to this to do it more efficiently. So one of the few things that I had going for me is I kept on focusing just on the hard work, but I was surrounded by amazing company leaders along the journey where people saw in me what I didn't see in myself because I've just never had the experience. So, for example, Dr. John Cobb, she was the former FDA division director, but when I met her, she was head of U.S. policies and regulatory at Novartis. She motivated me to think bigger. And she said, if you have a passion and work ethic that you have, you can really make an impact. So one of the things I kept on running into as a challenge was I would see these amazing compounds, but couldn't make a business case of getting company to support that financially from a commercial model. So with her help, I was able to go to NYU Executive MBA. She wrote me this amazing letter, which is still moving, and I keep it in my small folder of things that you go to when you're having a bad day or a down day to motivate you and think positively. And there were other leaders like Dr. Brian Daniel, Dr. Marlene Hefner from the FDA that gave me the first exposure to rare disease. These leaders and sponsors really made an impact in me finding my path. So I want to do the same and pay this forward. I want to help mentor our team and people we cross paths with so they can figure out their strengths and they can hopefully also find out some of the gaps that they have and maybe work on them. And this is not a short-term vision of let's just meet an objective, right? Let's make sure we do one training a year and that's it. It's an ongoing goal. Let's help each other become better versions of ourselves. So that way we can help the next generation and the generations there to follow. And hopefully do it in a way without making the same mistakes that I've made and others make along the way. Hopefully we can eliminate that time and error.
I love that. And let's talk about some of those lessons. So wind up the Wayback Machine. Is there something that you knew now that you didn't know then?
I think there's 4 things. Some of them I knew back then, but I didn't know the impact of it. And in the short term, felt like a failure and bad mistakes. But now I really cherish them. And I think that is to never give up. When you know you're doing the right thing, even if it's not the popular thing or the cool thing at the table, saying it makes a difference. And being that voice that says, hey, I have a different opinion or different idea, and here's why. Having that confidence to do that doesn't matter if you're, again, a manager or a vice president or C-suite. Being able to do that early on is really valuable. My first job that I ever had, I went to an open Q&A session where they said, hey, here's a strategist, and you already have questions, and I raised my hands and had some really strong questions and thoughts from my prior experience. And at the end of the meeting, somebody pulled me aside saying, Kinnari, that's just sad. You're not supposed to actually share it because now people are not happy with you. I'm like, oops. So at the time, it felt like a mistake. Like, what am I doing? Speaking my mind. But now I feel like I'm glad I did. So that's one of the lessons I've learned along the way. And the second one we talked about is really asking for help. Ask for help when you don't know something. It really goes a long way. And I think the one that I am so privileged, and I don't know how I got this lucky, is discovering your passion. If you know what you love to do, and the sooner you find out what your passion is, you can devote all of your energy towards it. And that takes you a long way in making everything happen. So that, to me, those were my 3 key lessons. That is, speak up, even if it's not cool or popular. You might not be like in the moment, but if you're doing the right thing by the science, the pipeline, and the patients, you'll be okay in the long run. I think that was a good one.
I think those are 3 great ones. Now, finally, tell me about that wow moment that helped shape your career. Can you pick one out of your really long and distinguished and very successful career?
There's so many times when I interacted with patients and in communities all the way back from 2005, 6 onwards, that some of them I still keep in touch with, that I couldn't think of a single moment or an event. What I'd say is my career has really been shaped by every time I interact with a patient or have them get access to a therapy. I feel this huge sense of accomplishment and also this huge need to do more. And one of the reminders that I had 3 years ago is one of our disease research called LAD1. It's a really, really rare disease, life-threatening disease where unfortunately 2/3 of the patients die by the age of 2. Because of the crazy unmet medical need and the therapy were only being available with bone marrow transplant if they were lucky enough to have a sibling that survived the disease, which doesn't happen to be the case in most situations, unfortunately. I had gone around the world in India, a few hospitals, meeting patients, as well as our CMO and our CEO, to Europe, US, India, etc. And we had identified about a dozen patients for this clinical study that we were putting together. And to me, it's not a sense of accomplishment, but it's a wake-up call to me, is by the time we were able to get the clinical study up and running, unfortunately, most of those kids had already passed away. It made me feel like such a failure, but it also said, it made me feel like, okay, this is why we need to do things faster and better. And we need to bring all of the communities together we ran into issues of immigration, of trying to get these patients to the clinical studies, and et cetera. So our goal is really, my goal is, how do we share the knowledge and best practices we've learned at Rocket so other patients can get to their therapies faster, so they can have and hope. And our goal is kind of simple. If at Rocket Pharma, if we can work on diseases that are maybe so uncommon that most companies are like, no, thank you, it's not worth the cost and investment. If we can do this in a platform way, where we have 2 platforms, the AAV and lenti gene therapy, we can add in more diseases to it in a cost-effective, scalable manner. Maybe it's not just the 5 diseases we have in the pipeline now that we can help cure, but maybe there'll be hundreds more that we can do ourselves, or by sharing our knowledge with the community, with health authorities, we can do this for a lot more diseases than ever imagined. So that's kind of I think for me, the accomplishment is yet to come. That's the long and short answer, I'm sorry, because I think there's so much more I need to do here, and so much more we all need to do together.
Thank you so much for sharing that very personal insight. I have got chills. I mean, I can't imagine what you were feeling at that time in India when you had met the patients, you got to know the families, and then yet you couldn't do anything to help them. I can feel the devastation, but I can see also how it really sparked you to be bolder in your approach to solve some of these medical challenges. So thank you so much for sharing that.
It was a very moving experience, and I think not just for me, but for the Rocket team members. And that's why we do things, even though the Rocket team members are working to do what they do around the clock here for the science, we do things like the Rare Disease Day to get the awareness out to broader patients, broader healthcare providers, so hopefully there's less time to first diagnosis, there's less time to finding the right clinical study or therapy available, and hopefully there are more therapies available.
Thank you so much again, Kinnari, for being so much, and I look forward to seeing what you all do on Rare Disease Day. We'll be tracking along with you. So congratulations, and go get them.
Thank you, and thank you so much for your support and raising awareness. Really, really appreciate everything you're doing for this community as well.
Thank you for listening to this episode of WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast series. For more information about Rocket Pharmaceuticals, visit rocketpharma.com. While there, you can RSVP for Rare Disease Day, sponsored by Rocket and co-sponsored by RTW. For more episodes of WOW, visit pharmavoice.com/wow. This 2020 program is copyrighted by PharmaLinks LLC.